was, if you like, the stuff of fairy tales.
Ah, that's what everybody's been waiting for.
She seemed to fulfill all our romantic notions of what a princess should be.
Behind the palace walls,
You can't do that. I said, well, what are we going to tell the police?
the insiders reveal Princess Diana's most intimate secrets.
There were always men. 10, I think he was at the time. 10.
She was hunted. She said, I'm being hunted. And she was.
The conspiracy,
My husband is planning an accident in my car.
a chilling letter never seen before,
That is odd that she should think that 9 months before she died.
and the question everyone wants to ask.
Are you Harry's father?
Diana was the jewel in the crown. And at 36, has no age to die.
A sea of flowers and tributes covered Kensington Gardens, a spontaneous expression of love for the people's princess.
It's been 20 years since Diana's death. And on this anniversary, the central people in Diana's life have agreed to step back into the spotlight. Her lover, James Hewitt. Her bodyguard, Ken Wharfe. The Fleet Street journo, Richard Kay. Her trusted butler, Paul Burrell. And her best friend, Rosa Monckton. The man who was by her side the longest was her trusted butler, Paul Burrell. During the 80s and 90s, he was never far from the drama that surrounded the princess.
Diana has been a blessing and a curse.
Have a nice trip, ma'am.
It's a double-edged sword. You can't have one without the other. You have to weather the storm knowing that the good bits are worth it.
Today, Paul runs a quaint florist shop in the north of England, still surrounded by memories of the most exciting times of his life.
Might start at the very beginning and ask you about when you first met Diana.
It would be 1980, and the Queen said to me, a young lady's arriving this afternoon as a house guest. And the car arrived, and this very shy, innocent girl stepped out. And I said, can I take your bag? And she said, yes. I said, one small bag? How are you going to survive the weekend? And she said, oh, my goodness, I've not made a very good impression, have I?
During the early days of her courtship with Prince Charles, she kept working at a local kindergarten, even as the media interest intensified.
She certainly ticked all the boxes. I mean, she was beautiful, the right background, a virgin, we're led to believe. You know, all the things that were absolute requirements for an heir to the throne.
For Fleet Street correspondents like Richard Kay, Diana added spice to the royal round. He reported extensively on Diana and eventually became a trusted friend.
I remember that photo of her at the kindergarten. She had her long skirt on and the sun shining behind it. Do you remember that picture?
I remember that picture extremely well because that was the day that everybody said, oh, wow, and she's got legs too. She had fantastic legs. The royal family didn't do glamour. Suddenly, that all changed. Diana was glamour on sticks. I mean, she really was. And she sprinkled this sort of fairy dust over the stuffy old House of Windsor and transformed it almost overnight.
Coleherne Court is very famous. Where did Diana live?
This is where it all began. Diana's apartment was up there on the first floor. She shared it with 3 friends. She was dating Charles while she lived here.
So we remember Diana dashing out the front,
Yep.
hopping into the Mini.
Running around the corner, into the mini metro, all the photographers crowding around, some tripping over themselves. She's got her head down. That's where the shy Di story began. She sort of hid her eyes below her fringe. I mean, she was faintly embarrassed by it all.
She was 19. That's so young.
I know. She was barely out of school herself.
How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you.
Well, it is, naturally.
the heir to the throne presented his beautiful bride-to-be.
On February 24, 1981, Prince Charles announced Diana would be his queen. The pair looked anything but comfortable.
Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on. And I suppose in love. Of course. Whatever in love means.
It was really doomed from the outset in many ways. And Diana was not the pliant, conventional daughter of an earl that one might have expected. She had an independent thought, but she was great cunning, she was very smart, she was witty and fast.
On the 29th of July, 1981, a crowd of more than 600,000 lined the streets for the royal wedding.
I, Diana Francis,
Hi, Diana Francis.
take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George, to my wedded husband,
To my wedded husband.
to have and to hold,
To have and to hold.
from this day forward,
From this day forward.
So happy. She was so happy on that day. Something I'll never forget.
How are you enjoying married life?
Highly recommend it.
Have you cooked a breakfast yet?
A year later, Diana gave birth to Prince William and soon after brought him here to Australia.
I'll never forget the Prince of Wales later complaining whenever he got out of the car on his side, there'd be sighs and oohs and ahs from the crowd, and he would apologise, say, I'm sorry, my wife's on the other side. And that side of the road would get Diana, and there'd be lots of shrieks and crying with happiness.
Was he jealous?
I think he was. I think he was jealous of her popularity. I'm about to be eclipsed by somebody. Well, the somebody was his wife.
Less than a day old, he already sports 4 highly traditional names, but he'll be known, say his parents, as Harry.
Was there love and happiness in the marriage in the early years?
I think there was love there. I think those two boys are born out of love. I do.
Royal bodyguard Ken Wharfe had the role of keeping Diana and her boys safe. Ken shared special family moments, including William's first day at school.
Prince William is in Form 1 Red with 19 other boys.
We arrived at the school, there were 60 to 70 photographers.
One wave, and he was gone.
There's all these new boys there waiting to get into the school. And eventually one sort of tiptoed across this floor, sort of peered straight into William's face and said to him, excuse me, he said, is it true that you know the Queen? And William so coolly said, don't be silly, don't you mean Granny? And that's how it was. From that moment on, right through to, what, 8, 9 years working within that household, it wasn't actually a bad place to be, I have to say that.
But it wasn't long before cracks started to appear in the royal marriage.
I firmly believe that Diana did love the Prince of Wales. That she told me on a number of occasions. Whether he did is another matter.
Rumours were building that Charles was secretly seeing his former flame, Camilla Parker Bowles, and Diana was falling in love with her riding instructor, Captain James Hewitt.
I think she was quite easy to fall in love with, really, so I think I can be forgiven for that.
In just a few years, Diana had become more famous than any other royal in history.
The night she danced with John Travolta.
On VIP lists at the most glamorous events. And for the most part, she seemed to enjoy the trappings of her celebrity.
She sold magazines in their millions, newspapers too. She knew the pulling power she had.
And every time she appeared in public, the princess made a fashion statement. Her dresses now sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm about to get a personal fitting from her former butler.
Mel, I thought you'd like to see this.
Beautiful.
This is one of the princess's favourite dresses that she gave my wife, Maria. And actually, you're about the same height.
Well, I was going to ask, how tall was she?
Yeah, about you, so I think it would
I'm
fit.
fairly tall.
Yes. Boy, did she carry this well.
She was very glamorous.
She was.
In public, Diana was confident, but in private, she was falling apart. Her marriage was crumbling. Years later, she would admit to being in the grip of a devastating eating disorder.
I had bulimia for a number of years, and that's like a secret disease you inflicted upon yourself because your self-esteem is at a low ebb and you don't think you're worthy or valuable.
How badly did the bulimia grip her life?
She never escaped from it.
Ever?
Never. There's not a pill for bulimia. It's a mental condition. It's about lots of talking. It's about being supportive, being there for someone.
The private Diana was a lot lonelier than I had imagined.
All I ever wanted, she said, was to somebody put their arms around me and tell me I was beautiful and they loved me. That's all I wanted. And that's something which eluded her. The most famous woman in the world, trapped inside a palace, lonely.
Diana's own words, she talks about bulimia a lot. You came into her life when she was clearly very unhappy. Did you give her the confidence to blossom?
I hope so. Whenever she was at my home in Devon or with me, she said she didn't suffer from that. So I like to think I helped. Just about freezing. A bit chillier than Australia.
Just a little.
In Devon, in the southwest of England, I meet Captain James Hewitt, the man Diana turned to for comfort and love.
I suppose I was a good listener. I suppose that's how it started. Not really intentional.
James Hewitt was 28, tall, handsome and charming. They met at Buckingham Palace, where James was an army officer in the Queen's Life Guards Regiment. Diana asked him for riding lessons.
She had an aura of, there was something special around her.
Do you remember when you realised you were falling in love for this gorgeous young woman?
Yes, because it's over a gradual period. And then, you know, suddenly you can't, you know, get enough of each other or see each other as much as you want.
But did you want to whisk her away from it all?
Yes. Yes. And she wanted that too.
What did you guys do together? What did the two of you do in your time away from London, from paparazzi, from spying eyes?
Frivolity, really, and escapism. Walk, amazingly, not far from where we're sitting now, along the beach, or on the moor, a bit of cooking. Well, I'd cook and she'd wash up, just dinner and relaxing and laughing.
Protecting Diana on these secret rendezvous with James was her bodyguard, Ken Wharfe.
You're sleeping on a camp bed in a hallway while Princess Diana's behind closed doors with James Hewitt. Were you embarrassed?
No, I didn't. I wasn't embarrassed. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, it's pretty obvious, what was happening. But again, it wasn't for me to moralize on this. I was there for one specific reason. I would never let her down.
As the affair became more serious, James got to know William and Harry, even visiting them at their country home, Highgrove.
The love and affection they held for their mother was tangible. I had little uniforms made for them and showed them around some vehicles at Windsor, military vehicles. I suppose a lot of boys at that age are quite keen. But they followed it through and joined up and served their country, which is commendable. I mean, it really is.
At the height of their affair, James was called up to serve in the Gulf War. The time apart put pressure on their relationship, but the end came when it was exposed in the media.
Did you, in your heart, think that you would be able to hold on to it?
Well, for a short period, yes.
As someone who loved her, what did you hope would happen with the two of you?
It's a very good question, and it's quite difficult to answer because there wasn't really any hope. And it was torn between duty and love, really. I mean, it sounds a bit corny, but it's true.
James returned to England, forced out of the army, and was maligned in the media for selling his story. He's lived in virtual seclusion ever since.
What were the biggest misconceptions about you?
Well, love rat, kiss and tell, all these headlines and accusations are the most damaging, I think, and I wouldn't wish on anyone because they're not true.
Perhaps most hurtful of all the claims made about their affair was that James is Prince Harry's father, a view some even still believe today.
Are you Harry's father?
No, I'm not.
Why does that keep being repeated?
It sells papers.
That's heartbreaking for you, for him.
It's worse for him, probably. Poor chap.
So many people say to me, do you think that Harry was James Hewitt's child? No, not possible. Because that affair didn't start until Harry was born.
It had become apparent to all that the marriage was over, and publicly, Diana made no effort to hide it.
I think of that image of her sitting on the seat outside the Taj Mahal. That was such a public declaration of there's really no going back from here.
Yeah, it spoke volumes about the state of their marriage.
The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh.
10 months after that picture came this.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that, with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate.
She was 19 when she became engaged, incredibly young. And at that age, romance is a fairy tale, And when it turns out that actually life isn't like that, I think that is difficult, and it was very difficult for her.
Rosa Monckton was Diana's best friend and became a shoulder to cry on as the royal marriage was coming to a dramatic end.
I remember her saying to me, I go out into the streets and people wave at me and say they love me, then I come home and nobody does.
In 1994, in an extraordinary television interview, Prince Charles admitted to his affair with Camilla Parker Bowles.
Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife when you took on the vow of marriage?
Yes, absolutely.
And you were?
Yes. Until it became irretrievably broken down.
The princess was devastated that the prince should actually come out with this information and really ridicule her.
What was Camilla like? Diana called her the Rottweiler.
Yeah, it's not exactly an encouraging phrase to be called, but, you know, I can understand that, because Camilla didn't go away.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
In a candid 1995 interview, Diana also detailed her affair with James Hewitt.
Did your relationship go beyond a close friendship?
Yes, it did. Yes.
Were you unfaithful?
Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him. But I was very let down.
Did you love her very much?
Yes, I did. Yeah. That's why it's difficult to talk about it, really. But I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you regret meeting Diana?
No, I don't regret that. No. I regret some of the things that have been caused by that, but not that at all. No way.
There had been years of scandals and sordid headlines, but for the Queen, Diana's public sledging of Charles was the final straw.
Do you think he would wish to be king?
There was always conflict on that subject with him when we discussed it. And because I know the character, I would think that the top job, as I call it, would bring enormous limitations to him. And I don't know whether he could adapt to that.
She told me herself that she realized she shouldn't have questioned Charles's suitability to be king, because that was the critical thing as far as the monarchy was concerned, as far as the Queen was concerned. That's where she overstepped the line, when she started saying Charles basically wasn't up to it.
The Queen ordered a divorce and stripped Diana of her royal title, making her an outcast. She was 35, more famous than ever, and now searching for her place in the world. The royal marriage over, Diana began the new chapter in her life, immersing herself in the job of being a mum.
My first priority will continue to be our children, William and Harry, who deserve as much love and care and attention as I am able to give.
Diana wanted the boys to have as close to a normal upbringing as possible. She encouraged them to do commonplace activities like going to a theme park.
These were great days because you could see the kids enjoying themselves. It was something different. The objectors would say, why do you want to take your kids to a theme park? I mean, the Prince of Wales, I think what Harry had left would rip it out. Why do you want to go to the theme park? Because that's what kids want. They were great fun. Of course, what do kids want to do? They want to drench the security. So you have to live with that. Of course, Diana found that highly entertaining.
Diana was also using her popularity to highlight causes that were close to her heart. The carnage caused by abandoned landmines.
Yeah, I'm only trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world.
Changing the way the world viewed AIDS.
We thought it was a new plague and that merely touching the hands of an AIDS sufferer would pass this disease on. So this one day in early 1987, she went to an AIDS unit and Diana shook hands with these people, and she shook hands without gloves. And immediately it sort of broke the taboo, broke down a barrier, and suddenly it made a huge difference to the way people engaged with AIDS and the notion of what it meant.
Her humanity was absolutely extraordinary. Her way of cutting through race, language, you know, she didn't need words very often. It was a look or a touch.
Diana's humanity was felt in a very personal way by her close friend, Rosa Monckton. When Rosa gave birth to a stillborn baby, Diana made a surprising offer.
Was it she who suggested burying your baby at Kensington Palace?
Yes, yes, it was. It was. And again, you know, what an extraordinary thing to do.
I said, well, what are we going to tell the police? How are we going to get it through security? She said, well, I'm going to tell the chief inspector that we're going to bury a pet in the garden. She says, only you, I, and Rosa will know it's a baby.
We had a very, very moving ceremony. And she gave me a key to the garden. She said, you come in whenever you want. Policeman on the gate will know. I still have the key.
Do you miss her?
Very much.
The following year, Rosa had another daughter, Domenica, who has Down syndrome. Diana once again offered her support.
She just gave me the biggest hug and picked Domenica up and said, I'm going to be her godmother. She's going to need all the help she can get.
Like Rosa, those closest to Diana got to see there were many sides to this intriguing woman.
You're hugging the lamb. I'm hugging the lamb. She was a very complicated person and very emotionally insecure.
Volatile, moody, petulant, all of those things. Dressed up in a beautiful way.
She had some real depth. She was amusing. She did great impressions. She looked quite different away when she wasn't on show. For example, her hair was much flatter, and she would deliberately try and dress down. She would always inevitably wear a baseball cap to cover her head, and she had a very good line at sort of disarming people who would come up to us as they often did. Here, are you Diana? And she said, no, but I'm told I look like her. Oh, yeah, you do. And we would walk on. She craved an ordinariness. That's what I would say about her.
She also craved love, and there was no shortage of potential suitors.
There were always men. They were like flies. The boss and I had this system of, like a horse race. We put everybody into a trap, into a pen, with all their names. 1 to 10, I think it was at the time. 10. And they were all vying for the princess's attention. And they'd ring constantly. There was a famous movie star. There was a politician in the United States who promised her, if you marry me, I will make you the First Lady of the United States of America.
Most were kept secret. A few were scandalous. The leaked phone calls with James Gilby, known as Squidgygate.
Squidgy. It's so wonderful, isn't it? The feeling. I'd love it. I'd love it.
It was just a very short fling.
I think, well, let's say that it was a friendship. There's no doubt about that. In terms of a fling, there was some throwing around for certain, but it was not on the scale that Hewitt was.
Ken Wharfe had the unenviable task of keeping her private life private, which led to a few tricky situations.
Oliver Hoare, tell me about him.
He was a friend of the Prince of Wales, so this was playing pretty close at home.
I heard about the famous cigar scene in the hallway in the fire.
Well, that happened. I mean, he was rather keen on his Cohiba cigars, But unfortunately, he set the alarm off one night in his departure, semi-naked, trying to get out of the front of Kensington Palace.
In 1995, Diana met a man she called Mr. Wonderful, the Pakistani heart surgeon, Dr. Hasnat Khan.
Did you meet him?
I did, yes.
May I just ask you if he was a nice man?
He was lovely. Really lovely man. Yes.
And did he love her?
He did.
The secret relationship with the conservative doctor ended after 2 years, and her next boyfriend couldn't have been more different. Dodi Fayed was the womanising playboy son of Egyptian billionaire and Harrods owner Mohammed Al Fayed.
She fell for Dodi Fayed very quickly, totally head over heels, in a very short space of time.
Diana and Dodi's Mediterranean romance in the summer of 1997 played out in front of the long lenses of the world's paparazzi. Among the media pack covering the sensational story was French photographer Pierre Sue.
Was there big money in it? Were people making a lot from them?
Yes, the money was flying, bucket loads of money. Fleet Street were signing blank checks to everybody. No limit. It was absolutely amazing.
Diana's butler, Paul, spoke on the phone to her about the holiday she was having with her reportedly recreational drug-taking boyfriend, Dodi.
She said, I just want to come home. I miss my boys so much. She said, and do you know what? He doesn't spend any time with me. He's constantly locking himself in the bathroom. What's he doing in there? I said, oh, come on. You know what he's doing in there. Well, it's so frustrating. I don't like it. She would not have married Dodi Al Fayed.
The unlikely couple had been together for 7 weeks when Diana travelled to Paris with Dodi on August 30, 1997, with the paparazzi in hot pursuit.
I still to this day find the interest daunting and phenomenal, because I actually don't like being the centre of attention. A normal day would be followed by 4 cars. A normal day would come back to my car and find 6 freelance photographers jumping around me. But you get that the whole time. It's quite difficult.
She was hunted. She said, I'm being hunted. And she was.
It was a hot August night in Paris. Diana and Dodi had dinner here at the Ritz, the hotel owned by his billionaire father, Mohammed Al Fayed. And just like everywhere the couple went, crowds of paparazzi followed. French photographer Pierre Sue had been pursuing the couple since their arrival in Paris that afternoon.
So these are upon the arrival at the Ritz Hotel. They were just ready to getting ready to come out.
We can't even see Diana's face.
No, but you can recognize her for sure. That's how famous she was. Even from the back of her head, you could tell who it was.
Diana no longer had Scotland Yard protection. Her safety was in the hands of Dodi's security team.
All the CCTV shows one man running this show, a man called Henri Paul. He's not a policeman. He's a civilian that works in the hotel. He just so happens to have been an employee of Fayed for many, many years. Henri Paul is seen talking to Dodi, talking to the princess. He gets into the car.
They were leaving in a car parked at the back of the hotel. Most of the paparazzi were waiting at the front. Henri Paul, who was driving, had been drinking all afternoon.
Just after midnight, and I learned that they left through the back door.
They were heading towards Dodi's apartment, the paparazzi in hot pursuit on motorbikes. Up ahead, the Alma Tunnel. their Mercedes travelling at nearly 3 times the speed limit. I've got to say, it's giving me chills knowing this is exactly where it happened. Just 9 minutes after leaving the Ritz Hotel, Henri Paul lost control of the car and crashed into the 13th pillar in the tunnel. Both he and Dodi Fayed died instantly. Security officer Trevor Rees-Jones survived, but Diana suffered devastating internal injuries. 3.5 hours after the accident came the news the world feared.
The Queen and the Prince of Wales and the Prime Minister have been informed of the accident and of the death of the Princess of Wales.
No, that's not true. That's not happened. Why are you telling me this? And it took literally 3-4 minutes for the truth to actually sink in.
Picked up a message, a voicemail on my mobile, and was told about it. Yeah, so it was quite a shock.
Paul Burrell flew immediately to Paris to be with Diana and make the arrangements to bring her back to London.
The princess was lying on a bed. She was covered by a white sheet to the neck and to the ankles. And I approached the bed and I held her hand. And she was warm. So I thought, she's sleeping, she's not dead. This isn't a dead person in front of me. So I kept telling her to wake up. And I started to shake her hand, wake up. Come on, wake up. And I realized that she wasn't going to wake up. And then the floodgates opened. Because I realized that I'd lost my friend.
Within hours, the loss of Diana was felt around the world. The response was on a level never seen before.
She could have had no idea what an impact she had on people. I found that really profoundly moving.
May those who died rest in peace. And may we, each and every one of us, thank God for someone who made many, many people happy.
More than 2 billion people watched Diana's funeral on television. The most poignant image of all, her sons, 15-year-old William and 12-year-old Harry, marching stoically behind their mother's coffin.
Nothing else mattered but those 2 boys without their mother. I think that was my abiding memory, really, of that day.
It's the envelope.
Yes, Mummy. Yeah.
We should have looked after her better. It's shame. Shame on us for not appreciating what we had. Diana was the jewel in the crown. We didn't appreciate her while we had her. And at 36, that's no age to die.
Diana's life was filled with drama and controversy. As it turns out, so was her death.
Princess Diana, at the age of 36, has died of massive internal injuries.
There have been so many conspiracy theories, it's as though none of us believed a princess could die the way she did. None more so than Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed. He was convinced it was murder.
The murder is definitely a murder. The whole plot being executed from the head of the royal household, who is Prince Philip.
The most extraordinary suggestion of foul play came from Diana herself.
I do have a lot of letters, and I've never shown them before. You know, I'm a bit reluctant to show them you now. This particular letter is rather poignant because it's rather spooky thinking that she sat and prophesied her own death.
Diana wrote this letter to Paul Burrell months before the fatal accident.
This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry.
Were these thoughts that she had come up with, or were they ideas that had been put into her mind from psychics and mystics?
Yes, you're right. Some of these thoughts did come from mystics and psychics, but you can't get away from the fact that she actually wrote it. She actually took time and bothered to write down what her fears and feelings were.
In the end, the most investigated car crash in history came down to a speeding drunk driver and passengers not wearing seatbelts.
It was as simple as that, and as stark as that, and as final as that. And people found it very hard to accept that this star in the firmament should suddenly be wiped out in such an ordinary thing as a car crash.
"20 years on, our fascination with Diana remains as strong as ever.